What's up, everybody? This is Henry Fleischer here from the Cannabis Dispatch, also the CBD Business Networking group on Facebook. And I have a very special guest today. I have somebody who's doing something a little bit different in this space. I have Dennis Putnam of Outworld Botanicals. So, Dennis, glad to have you on. So, what is Outworld Botanicals all about?
So, with Outworld Botanicals, the company essentially started off as a remediation, an hemp oil remediation company. So basically, people who are looking to make broad spectrum oils, the Delta-9 part of that has to be removed. And so we use liquid chromatography systems that enable us to go in there and target Delta-9. Now, we can target many of the other cannabinoids, but for the most part, we're making a broad spectrum oil. So we want to keep all those non-Delta-9 cannabinoids and just strip out the Delta-9 part. So that's kind of where we began. Doing that for various people. But then that sort of evolved into us growing our own hemp and then extracting the oils out of that. We do cold ethanol-based extractions and then started making our own oils that way. And as that part of our business, more focusing on that vertical integration began to grow, our capacity to work with others to make broad spectrum oil began to decline. We still do some of that work, but not as much as we did when we first started.
Oh, gotcha. What was that aha moment where you're like, hey, I can use Delta-9 to make this product?
Well, yeah, so obviously as we were remediating oil and making all this broad spectrum oil, you started to accumulate a lot of Delta-9. Now, what we used to do is we would take all the Delta-9 that we had and we would blend it with diesel fuel. And then we had an environmental company that would actually come take that away. I think they wound up taking it to a cement plant who would use it for fuel. But we started thinking, you know, the Delta-9 THC, while a lot of people kind of give it a bad rap because of its intoxicating effects, we do know it has tremendous medicinal value. I mean, it's part of that entourage system, right? It's a necessary component. Now, I understand that a lot of people may not like the effects that you will get off of Delta-9. That's why there's such a large market for broad spectrum oils. But still, there's something to be said about Delta-9. So he said, is there a way that we can utilize Delta-9 in a way that keeps products still within the legal limit, right? We have that 0.3% weight by volume limit. So can we do that, but then still offer people high levels of Delta-9, particularly when you start talking about people that have a lot of pain issues. We know about cancers. I'm gonna try not to get too much into the medicinal side of that because I don't want to get in trouble by the powers that be. You know how that works. So you kind of limited what you want to say here. But the medicinal value of Delta-9 THC is very well documented. And so we just wanted to see if there's a way we can offer people that and still keep all the products legal.
Oh, gotcha. And when did you start like the business as well too?
Well, I actually go all the way back to 2011. I actually started a company called Mountain Vapor, which was an e-cigarette company. And so I started manufacturing liquids for electronic cigarettes. I also have a retail store, so we sell liquids there as well as all the different devices. But through my contacts in the e-liquid world, I hooked up with an individual who owned a flavor house. He made flavors. Now, he also was selling base nicotine at the time. So I began to purchase nicotine from him. And that person, his name is Donovan Drews, and he wound up becoming my business partner in Silver Moon Nutraceuticals, which is another company that I have where we make not only just base nutraceutical type products, but we wanted to take cannabinoids and introduce nutraceutical science to that and make very effective products. CBD products. So we started that company up and started making all the tinctures and the salves and the capsules and all your standard CBD-based products. And it was during that time period that we realized that there was a need to make all this broad spectrum oil. At that time, broad spectrum oils were very, very expensive. So rather than continuing to buy the broad spectrum oil, we decided we would just get into that business ourselves. So we bought the liquid chromatography systems and started remediating our own oil. And then that's how, that eventually leads into Outworld Botanicals. We actually started another company called US Hemp Processing. That company actually does all the extraction work on the flower as well as the actual remediation.
Oh wow, so it's like you're all over, like you're in all parts of the industry.
Absolutely. We are completely vertically integrated. We go from seed all the way through the finished product.
Oh, so you control your entire process yourself, from
Correct.
to start to
Yeah,
finish. That's great.
that's right. Now, we didn't start off that way. We start off, buying crude. I mean, I can remember buying crude for $12,000 a kilo, just to
Whoa.
kind of give you an idea of how, how much things have changed. I mean, now what's crude going for these days? Less than 500. I know you can find it for that. So we start off buying oil, and then we would remediate that oil, turn that oil into broad spectrum, and then eventually, as the prices, because the price was so high at that time, I don't realize it's not now. That's sort of why we got into the growing side of this. We said, hey, we got a few acres, let's go ahead and get into that. So we actually contract with a local farmer here. His name is Wayne Morgan. Does an excellent job. Just an excellent grower. And so we work with him to grow all this particular hemp for us. We grow very specific strains. We're most interested in growing Bayox. That seems to be the strain that gives us the cannabinoid profile that we're looking for. So again, we'll take all that flower, do cold ethanol extractions on it, and then from there we can either use it as is, right, for a full spectrum product, or take it, remediate it, and then use that as a broad spectrum product.
Oh wow, I say too, like some of the most successful businesses, they control their entire process from start to finish. So it's good how, like, you saw that aha moment where it's like, yeah, crude's too expensive, we're gonna grow our own stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, obviously, again, crude prices have crashed, as we know. So it's like, well, is it cheaper to just buy your own crude? Because what's happening, I think, is so many people got into growing that the market wound up getting completely flooded with oil. So you have tons of oil out there that now people don't really know what to do with. So they're just sort of dumping it on the market. And I believe that's why you're seeing a lot of these crazy prices. I mean, yeah, you buy 200 kilos at a time, you can get that down to, $100 a kilo. It's crazy. But I think eventually that's going to change. Once all that old oil exits the marketplace and gets sold off, you don't have nearly the farmers involved now. I mean, if you look across the country, the amount of acres being planted is going down and down and down. So eventually, once all this old oil gets out of the marketplace and it's time to bring in new oil, you could run into a situation where you don't quite see as much, that the market will no longer be flooded. And then hopefully, for the farmer's sake, some of these prices will come back to reality as sort of equilibrate.
Oh yeah, I know. Like there's some farmers who are sitting on plants for like 2+ years. So yeah.
I know. It makes you wonder what kind of shape that material's in, but
Oh yeah.
yes, I just don't know. But yes, you're absolutely right. So I know a lot of farmers have certainly gotten hurt over the years because of just this massive supply of flower that's out there. But like I said, I do think that that's going to equal itself out at some point. And eventually, I think the whole marketplace is going to go towards those companies that are vertically integrated. I think that's what you're going to wind up seeing, is the bigger companies just saying, hey, let's just grow it ourselves and go through the entire process and have complete control over that. We kind of saw that, and that's why we decided to move in that direction.
Yeah, so that good foresight on your part. So what was it that made you want to get into hemp?
So my background is actually in healthcare. Prior to me even doing the electronic cigarette thing, I was 20 years working as a registered sleep technologist, respiratory therapist, EEG technician, and EKG technician. So I got a lot of different things that I did. But I wound up working for a group of pulmonologists locally, working with all their sleep apnea patients, insomniacs, restless leg syndrome, narcolepsy, all the different sleep disorders. But I'm also have a background in respiratory therapy and did smoking cessation specialist. So I'm a certified smoking cessation specialist. And I began to work with a lot of my customers, they're patients, I'd say customers now, patients, to help them stop smoking, but they began to show up with these electronic cigarette devices.
Yep.
So basically, the physicians I was working with and myself, we looked at that and said, hey, there's really no reason why people wouldn't switch over. So we began to switch all these people over. But my interest in healthcare is what led me to get involved with the hemp industry. I'm very nutrition oriented. I think a lot of times the way we practice medicine today doesn't focus on the root causes of diseases. The way we practice medicine focuses on treating the symptoms of diseases. But I said, everything that you need to heal yourself, everything your body actually needs to properly heal itself already exists in nature. And when you look at pharmaceuticals, the pharmaceutical companies, their goal is to take what exists in nature, synthesize that so you can patent it. But I said, you know, so when you begin to look in nature, you realize there's all kinds of medicinal plants out there. And one of the best medicinal plants on earth is actually the cannabis plant. Its medicinal value is just unbelievable as a medicine, but that's beside, you know, that's without even talking about the fiber part of this. You know, it truly is just an amazing plant. So when North Carolina got involved with the industrial hemp pilot program, my business partner and I, that's Donovan, who I mentioned earlier, decided, hey, we need to absolutely be part of this. And so rather than just making these nutraceutical products, remember, nutraceuticals is taking plants and getting their medicinal properties out of that, whatever that may be, and then using that to build products with. Well, what a better way to do that than with the hemp plant. So that's sort of how we got involved with that whole thing, is say, hey, let's take this hemp plant, let's get the best oil we can out of that, and start building products around CBD, not just CBD, but just cannabidiol oil in general, right? All the different cannabinoids. And let's take all that and see what kind of products we can make, and let's give people the most effective product we can possibly create at a very reasonable, you know, price point. And so that's kind of how it all started.
Oh, wow. What was the toughest thing you went through when you first opened up?
Well, probably one of the toughest things initially in the hemp world would be finding legitimate people that you could actually work with, sourcing out good oils, sourcing out good flour. Very early in this game, there was a lot of nonsense going on out there. And so trying to weed through that and find the people who you wanted to establish relationships with that could be in it for the long haul and knew what they were doing was a big challenge for us. Now, eventually we were able to do that, but it's sort of the wild, wild west. And it still is. I mean, when you look at this industry in general, it's completely crazy. And sometimes it can be difficult to find the right people that are trustworthy and actually know what they're doing, rather than just mixing up a bunch of stuff in their basement, right? Now, I think that's going to change. You know, the FDA was supposed to roll out regulations for the hemp industry, gosh, what, 2 or 3 years ago? Where are those regulations? We still really haven't seen anything. And so we're still operating in essentially an unregulated marketplace. There's no regulations on how you make finished products in this industry. So as a result, you wind up with all kinds of stuff. You know, sometimes you've heard these stories where a lab will take several CBD tinctures as an example, test those out, and find out that they're mislabeled. What's listed on that label as far as total milligrams of CBD goes is not what's actually in the bottle. And you kind of see that a lot, and that still goes on today. You know, so there's subpar products due to there's simply no being regulations. Now, when it comes to government regulations, you have to be careful what you wish here, because a lot of times the government will wind up overreaching, and they can make the regulations so difficult to comply with that it absolutely destroys the small mom and pop businesses. And this is what we saw in the e-cigarette industry. E-cigarettes were very, very similar to this. It was wild, wild west for many, many years. Then the FDA said, we're going to regulate the industry, and essentially came in and destroyed it. They made it so expensive, it's so costly, that most small businesses could no longer exist in that atmosphere. They just could not comply with the regulations. And my fear is we're going to see the same thing in the hemp industry. So while we do want some controls, we don't want Wild West, we don't want to go to the other extreme. And unfortunately, that's what the FDA always seems to do, is go in the absolute other extreme. And essentially, they turn the industry over to the mega corporations who, you know, if it costs you $2 million a year to comply, right, just to operate in this atmosphere, the big multinational corporations don't care about that. What's $2 million to comply to be able to create all these products? But that wipes out a large section of the industry who will never be able to comply with that, thus turning it over to the big multinational corporations, which is kind of what they want. They don't want to have to compete against all these small businesses. So a lot of times you'll see them work with the FDA to get regulations passed that benefit them. And unfortunately, that's just the way it works.
Yeah, like I know, like there should be a middle ground, like where it's like where they get all the hemp experts, they consult with the FDA on what the law should be.
You would think that would work that way, and I know
Yeah,
that they
I
always
know.
say, It just doesn't seem to actually happen in reality.
Yeah, because like even too, if they hand over the power to the corporations, they weren't part of the building process of the industry. So it's like they should be the ones who know all about the plant and all about how the business
Absolutely.
works.
Like I said, we saw the exact same thing in the electronic cigarette world where the small businesses built up this entire industry of e-cigarettes. They built all of it. And then big tobacco comes in once they have all these regulations and just sweeps the whole thing up because they're the only ones that have the money necessary to comply with all the federal regulations. So while they sat back and let the industry get built up by the small guys, but then at the end, when it gets big, now it's this big industry. Let's just suck all the money out of it by working with the FDA to get these regulations that allow us to do it. And I'm very worried that we're going to see very similar things in the hemp industry as well. We already see, where companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi, they want to be involved in the industry. You even have beer companies that want to be involved with the industry. Massive nutraceutical companies that want to be involved in this industry, but they're all sitting back on the sidelines right now, waiting for the FDA to release these regulations. Because, as you know, the FDA said you're not allowed to put CBD in any food products. Now, we're seeing that, don't we? What's a gummy? Is gummy a CBD product? You see gummies, you see chocolates, right? You see a ton of various food products that people are selling that have CBD in it. And technically, you're not supposed to do that. But of course, everyone is doing that. But that's why you haven't seen the really big guys. Where's General Mills? Where are some of these gigantic companies? They're sitting there and they're waiting. And they probably are working with the FDA as we speak to eventually roll out these regulations. And you're going to find out that most of these guys that are making all these products right now are not going to be able to do it. They're not going to be able to comply with the regulations.
Oh yeah, I hear you on that. Well, I think Amazon even said too that they want to get into the industry.
Yeah. Everyone is going to wind up doing it. And there's a lot of gray zones, certainly in this industry. Delta-9 is sort of a good example of one of these gray zones. And if you're looking at whether you're the DEA or the FDA, and you're looking at this Delta-9 phenomenon that's occurring across the country, they got to be sitting there going, what's going on with all this Delta-9 and exactly how should we regulate that? Because you get into some technicalities within the hemp bill itself that I can use any of the cannabinoids, right? Well, as you know, Delta-9 has a very, there's a very small proportion of it found within the hemp plant itself, so tiny that you would never be able to have a Delta-9 industry like we have now. So as we know, these are all conversions. You take CBD, and you put it through a conversion process that turns it into essentially Delta-9 at the end of the day. Yep. Now you say my CBD is all hemp derived, and it says I can use hemp derived. It doesn't say anything about doing these conversions. So it most definitely is sitting in a gray zone. Is it legal? I think if you look at the Farm Bill, it certainly would appear that it is legal. One of the issues that you run into with these conversions, though, is you don't know what else you're converting. You don't just CBD just doesn't become Delta-9. There's other things that go on here, and you are creating other compounds that you don't know about. You don't understand what their health effects are. And whenever you talk to some of these labs that are testing Delta-9 products, they'll tell you on the chromatograms, you'll see all kinds of peaks on here. There are many different peaks besides the Delta-9 peak. We don't know what those are. So I think it's important that we do start looking more into that and saying, what are the long-term effects of consuming Delta-9 products? I don't think we really know the answer to that. But from our standpoint, from Outworld Botanicals, this is sort of why we started creating these Delta-9 products as well. Again, my whole interest is in the healthcare side of this. That's my background. I'm a healthcare professional by trade. Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure when we deliver something to somebody, it's a safe, effective product. I don't have to do conversions into Delta-9. Why can't we take Delta-9, hemp derived? It still comes out of the hemp plant. But why can we not take that Delta-9 rather than doing a conversion into Delta-9 and utilize that? It's all natural, came right out of the plant. There's no conversion, there's no synthetics. And to me, that seems to be a better option rather than doing the complete conversion into Delta-9. Now, that's just my opinion. I know a lot of people are going to get mad at me for that because there's a lot of money invested in the Delta-9 industry right now. But that's not where we're going. We're saying, let's grow our hemp, let's get the Delta-9 out of that, and then let's utilize that Delta-9 in these products, knowing full well that I'm following their rules. It's 0.3% weight by volume, and as long as I stay under that, I'm going to be completely legal. I don't know what the FDA or anybody in the industry could say about that, because if you look at some of the CBD tinctures, just a regular full spectrum tincture, if I have a 1500 milligram CBD tincture bottle, there is more Delta-9 THC in that bottle than there is in my Crazy Sauce product that I sell. Crazy Sauce is at 0.06%. Look at the COA on some of these full spectrum oils, 0.2. That's a ton of Delta-9 in there. So that's kind of where our stance is let's focus on Delta-9 and rather than doing these conversions.
All right, got you. One thing too, though, like that, some brand owners who start like selling like their own oils and tinctures, they don't go through the whole process of getting the COAs too. So I think that's another issue as well.
Yeah, I'll tell you that. Then that's a big problem because not only do you see it with the CBD tinctures, you're seeing it on Delta-8 stuff where people will take somebody else's COA and just change it.
Yeah,
that's illegal.
That's scummy.
That actually does blow me away. Absolutely. Or people can take a COA and just sort of manipulate numbers and change them and all that, which is why it's important that a COA have a QR code on it that takes you directly back to the lab itself. Or if you want to be able to see a COA with the lab's name on it. So if you have any questions about that, call the lab up. They're going to have records of that. They will be able to tell you if that's real or not, if it's been falsified. So QR codes, call the lab. A lot of times, if you look at a COA and you look at the fonts, you'll see that this font is different than the rest of the fonts. That's a warning sign. So you really want to make sure you look at those COAs and make sure that you're dealing with legitimate companies and that the COAs are definitely real.
Oh, of course. And knowing everything you know now, is there anything you would do differently if you had to start over from day one?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you broke up there. I missed that part.
So yeah, I was saying, knowing everything you know now, is there anything you would do differently if you had to do it all over again?
Oh boy. I think, if I were to do it all over again, starting over, you certainly learn a lot as you go through business. And I think early on, I would have gotten involved growing immediately. I had no interest in growing at first. But now that I kind of see all the nonsense that goes on out there, I prefer to have complete control over my supply line.
Yep.
And so going through the mess of having to buy through other people, whether you're going direct to find a farmer or you're going through a broker, trying to negotiate pricing, things not working out, the farmer expecting more, there's just all these obstacles that occurred that just gave me headaches. So having complete control over the supply line, going from the seed, I purchased a seed, I know what it is, I put it in the ground, I grew the plant, I extracted the oil, I remediated that oil. I didn't have a third party involved anywhere in that. That's what I would have done differently, for sure.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, too, the thing you don't want to do at the beginning is what most beneficial to you, too. So you mentioned
absolutely. I'll tell you, farming's tough work, man. I get those guys that are out there growing acres of this plant. Kudos to them, because that is definitely not an easy thing to do. I mean, it's one thing to get a plant going in the ground, right? Or not just seeds, but clones, obviously. Get that in the ground is one thing, but getting that plant to its full potential, making sure that your pH is right, and make sure you're giving it the right nutrients at the right time, is so important. And there's so much science that actually goes into that. It's not an easy thing to do. And I know obviously I've learned a lot about growing, but that's why we do have an individual I mentioned earlier that we work with who's the brains behind the whole growing operation. And I'm very grateful to him because, man, the amount of work it takes to get to the finished product is amazing.
Oh, you have to have the people too tending the plants, making sure it's like, hey.
Oh, absolutely, to do it properly. That's why it's a shame when you see these prices crashing like they are right now. I mean, the price of biomass has crashed, the price of oils have crashed out. And a lot of times I think people are just, we talked about it earlier, they're just wanting to get rid of all the stuff that they have. Even if they're willing, even if they want to take a loss. Or if I'm sitting on 2-year-old biomass and I just want to dump that, I want to get whatever I can out of it by this point. It's not about making money, it's about getting some type of money back out of it. And that's why you see these prices being driven down, is because of all that old biomass and old oil sitting on the market. I know guys that are still sitting on oil from 2019 that can't get rid of it. you
Oh,
know.
yeah.
And so eventually they're going to be like, hey, I got 100 kilos. It's yours for $50 a kilo. Somebody will come in and buy that. There's no question about that. And not to mention the fact that some of the subpar products that are out there, the dirty oils, you look at some of the COAs on this crude oil and it's 50%, 45%. What is that? When we grow our plants, our oil is always in the 60% range. Once we get it down into oil, and once we remediate out the Delta-9 to make a broad spectrum, that'll be up to 75% CBD.
Oh,
So there's, like I said, there's just a lot of junk oil out there. I know they're selling it cheap, and I know that is useful, particularly if you're going to make isolate out of it. So you can get a cheap oil, winterize it, crash it all out, get your CBD, take that CBD, and then do the conversion process into Delta-8. And I think that for those Delta-8 guys, that's why Delta-8 prices aren't that expensive, is because you can buy cheap oil right now. But eventually that's going to change.
yeah. So you think the price of like oil is going to go up?
I think the price of oil is going to go up. I think once you get rid of all the old oil, again, there's guys sitting out there from 2019 oil. Once all that is depleted, once all that is gone, including all the old biomass, because there's less people growing now, you're going to see the price of oil go back up eventually. But I think we're probably 3 years away from that.
Oh,
Unfortunately, which is bad for some of the farmers. But you got to be able to stick it out. You got to be able to pivot. You got to be able to stick it out. You have to get involved with things that are going to generate money. And that's why we see this big D8 market. Let's face it, prices were crashing. People didn't know what to do. Bam, here comes Delta-8. And I know for a fact, Delta-8 has saved some of these retail shops as well. Some of the CBD stores have been saved by Delta-8 because they were going out of business due to the pandemic. A lot of these stores had to close for a very long time. They were not able to operate. And so they went through a very tough period. Luckily, if you want to call it luck, Delta-8 came along and saved a lot of these businesses.
Yep. And when you cited like how the price is going to go up, you think it's going to go up to that really high level it was before?
No, I don't think it's ever going to go back up to that $12,000 a kilo range. I mean, remember, even people were trying to, biomass was selling for $75 to $100 a pound back in the early days as well. Now, I don't think it's ever going to return back to those prices. But I wouldn't be surprised to see biomass go, 10, 15, maybe even $20 a pound, which I think is a more realistic number, especially for the farmers, considering what they have to go through. I'm a big supporter of farmers, and they put a ton of work on this stuff, and I don't want to see the farmers get hosed on all this. So I think, I think you're going to see those prices go back up to that range. I think probably when you look at oils, you're probably going to be looking at that $800 to $1,000 a kilo price range eventually. When you get into broad spectrum, probably $1,200, somewhere around there. But I think definitely the prices will increase. We look at the price of isolate. Isolate used to be very expensive. Isolate's dirt cheap now. It's come way down. But again, it all goes back to the amount of oil that's on the marketplace right now.
Oh, of course. What would you say is the toughest part about having a business this year in this space?
Well, I'll tell you, the toughest part has been trying to get through the pandemic. That shut down, as a manufacturer, we are dependent upon retail outlets selling our products. Well, when those retail shops closed down and were unable to sell those products, now granted, you still had online sales, but it's still not the same as having a brick and mortar store that people are walking into every day. And so we definitely went through some very tough times last year. Wondering, hey, are we going to be able to survive this? We need those brick and mortar stores to get back open again. Now, luckily, as we, everything's starting to open back up again. So we're slowly beginning to see an increase back in business again. But a lot of businesses that I know of, the brick and mortar stores, I know several guys that just shut their doors forever. They're gone. I mean, they're never coming back. And that's a travesty that even occurred. I get it. I mean, I understand. Yes, we went through a hard time. We did have a pandemic, but to see all these small businesses just completely go under, it's just sad. But that was one of the biggest challenges for us, was to be able to be able to start selling all these products again. We need to be able to go to trade shows. Trade shows have been shut down for over a year. The best way to network is through going to shows, right?
Yeah.
So we saw that all decline. But luckily, trade shows are coming back, stores are opening back up. There does seem to be a light at the end of this tunnel. So hopefully we can get things rolling and going back to the way things were. And, 2019, everybody was rocking in 2019. Things were going well. Then bam, pandemic, and that shut all that down.
Yeah, in the fall, there's a lot of events scheduled too, even like the big events. Like they're coming back.
Yes. Yeah, there's tons of events. Things are opening back up, so kind of excited to see all that and get back out there again. So
yeah, I think those events too are going to be jam packed, definitely, because it's like pretty mixed out here.
We just did an event in Atlanta maybe 3 weeks ago. There's a USA CBD Expo down in Atlanta, and it went pretty well. I mean, I forgot what the total number of people they had. I know it was well over 2,000 people went through there. So it was good to see people again, people getting back out. It was good to network with all the other manufacturers and stores and everything. Everybody had a great time. So it was very exciting to see all that happening.
Oh, yeah, of course. So yeah, if a customer was to choose between your business and 3 others just like yours, why'd you suggest they give you a try first?
I think we have a great background in I have a background in healthcare, my business partner, chemistry, flavor development, nutraceutical work. So we can take what we know about nutraceutical science, and I have an extensive knowledge of nutrition, and be able to take those things, understand human anatomy and physiology and how these various cannabinoids interact with the body, and making a product that is going to be effective for people. And we hear that from our customers all the time. I took CBD tincture A, and then I took yours. And for some reason, even though it's the same milligrams, yours just seemed to work better. Yours seemed to be more effective. Why is that? And I think it's because of how we build these products. We don't go in and just strip oil and pour it in the product and say, here you go. We will separate cannabinoids. Again, we use liquid chromatography system to separate cannabinoids, and we actually rebuild things at very specific proportions. We spent a lot of time looking at how does this cannabinoid and this cannabinoid interact with each other, and what type of an effect does that give in the body. So if you look at our Crazy Sauce product, which is a hemp-derived Delta-9 product, it's not just all Delta-9. That's not what it is. There are actually other cannabinoids in there. Very, very small proportions of them that actually don't even show up on the COA unless you test it out 3 digits. But if you look at that, you will see, for example, there's quite a bit of CBC in there. Mm-hmm. But there are these other cannabinoids in there. And what we found out is by combining these cannabinoids together with the Delta-9, which sort of acts as this catalyst for those other cannabinoids, we are able to give you very specific effects. So Crazy Sauce gives you kind of a 4-hour of a sativa up, and then a 4-hour of an indica down. You're like, well, how did you get it to do like that? It's how we discovered that these various cannabinoids, when combined in a specific way with the Delta-9, that's the effect it gave you. We made the first Crazy Sauce, the very first one we ever did. It was awful. And the reason why it was awful is because it was such a tremendous of an indica feeling, such a couch lock, that after you took it, you literally could not move for 8 hours. You were just plastered in your chair, drooling for 8 hours. It was not a pleasant experience. Like, no one's going to want to do this. Now, maybe if you were in severe pain, something like that, or going through chemotherapy or something like that, you may want that strong indica feeling. But I think for your average person, it's not something that they would necessarily find desirable. So we played around with that, and that's how we hit upon both sides. We give you a sativa and then an indica. So it is a matter of combining these cannabinoids, and I think that's sort of what we specialize in.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so that's cool to learn about the whole process of finding that right balance.
And I think that's what it is. Like we have a very effective salve, right? Rub it on for arthritis, joint pain, that kind of thing. Now, while our salve does have CBD in it, we also took some of the knowledge from our nutraceutical world. There's actually 10 essential oils that are very well known for their anti-inflammatory effects. But on top of that, we also put in a little bit of capsaicin. Now, capsaicin is what makes peppers hot. It's what gives peppers their hotness. Yeah. But it's a great nutraceutical item. So you can take a small amount of the capsaicin, put that in that salve, and when you rub it on, the capsaicin, we have a way of driving it directly into that sore spot, and it will numb the nerve endings to eliminate pain. So while we give you the CBD and these other essential oils to get rid of the inflammation, let's immediately target the pain to give the individual relief. Now, the capsaicin is another thing that we do ourselves. We grow Carolina Reaper plants. Carolina Reaper pepper plants are the hottest pepper in the world. They hold the Guinness Book of World Record for that. And so they contain just a ton of capsaicin. So we actually take those peppers, dry them out, grind them up, extract the capsaicin out of those peppers, and then that's what we use in our own formulas.
Oh, wow. Do you actually eat the real peppers or no? Is it like...
I have eaten the pepper and I don't recommend it.
No, yeah,
it is outrageous. It is outrageous how hot these things are.
I really like spicy food, but if it's past at a certain spice level, you lose the flavor though. Then
yeah, you do. It is now. These Reapers can be used in food products, but you have to use just tiny amount. But they are so overwhelming. It's actually difficult to, once we extract it and we're getting down to the pure capsaicin oil, that stuff is very hard to work with. You're having to wear respirators. It is incredible how strong and powerful that stuff is.
Oh, you can't touch yourself. Like you can't touch like your eyes. Like that's.
It's over. Yes, you get it on your eyes and don't go to the bathroom. So you get it anywhere on you. It makes life miserable for a couple of hours.
And another question I got for you too: what's the number one way you acquire new customers?
Basically, just networking and word of mouth. I would say word of mouth is probably our biggest form of advertising, because we make such effective products that do work and do help for people. They tell other people, and that's probably how we get most of our new customers. Is there's an individual, let's face it, all these shop owners, they talk to each other. It's not like they operate in a vacuum. So they have friends that are in the hemp industry. So one friend will tell another friend, hey, I'm looking for new products. They'll say, hey, try these guys out. And that's how we get most of our business. Now, prior to that, a lot of the business came from attending trade shows and networking with those people. But again, that's all kind of dried up. So it became very difficult the past year to drum up new business. Mm-hmm. It's still kind of difficult to get new business. You're not seeing too many new shops opening up these days. And most people are kind of satisfied with their current providers. So you're sort of just moving chess pieces around rather than there being brand new shops opening up, coming into the industry.
Oh, of course. And what role has the internet played in your business becoming more prevalent?
Oh, it's huge, especially during the pandemic. I mean, we do operate, Outworld Botanicals does not sell crazy sauce directly to consumers. We manufacture for the brick and mortar stores only. But I do have that other company I mentioned, Silver Moon Nutraceuticals, that does make finished CBD products. And we do have a website. The online presence is extremely important. And if it wasn't for that, direct retail sales, I don't know how we would have survived through the pandemic. And I think that's probably true for everybody. So the internet plays a very important role, not only for being able to sell your goods directly to the consumer, but back on that networking part, like what you guys are doing, for example, giving these companies an opportunity to network to each other sort of in this forum. And I think that's important, especially since we still can't really get to all these trade shows. So we have to rely more on these virtual type of events.
Oh yeah, of course. And even too, like, cause like we're in a Wild West too, it's good to have people stick together and exchange ideas and what's going well, what to do different.
That's why I love these groups. And of course, sometimes groups fall apart, or groups can oftentimes become very cliquey, if you will. And that you run into some problems with that. I've had problems with some other Facebook groups in the past. And oddly enough, it's not that the problems I always seem to run into is because I am trying to utilize Delta-9 in creating products. And a lot of people just seem to immediately take issue with that. Even though it's completely a legal product, I'm not doing anything illegal whatsoever. I'm not even doing conversions, which is what these Delta-8 products are. But yet I see a lot of flack from people because of what I'm trying to do here. And I just don't understand. That part.
I think it's like, think about it like this, like taxis don't like Uber. And then the hotels don't like Airbnb. Whenever something new comes along, people are skeptical.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. And I think people don't understand that you can have Delta-9 in a product. It is legal as long as you stay below that 0.3%. But Delta-9 seems to scare the hemp industry for some reason. They're very frightened by it, even though the Farm Bill gives them permission to be able to utilize Delta-9. There's nothing in there that says you can't use it. You just have to make sure you stay within that legal limit. So I think that you're going to see, I think one of the biggest people that are going to hate hemp-derived Delta-9 are those people that are involved in the regular cannabis industry in legalized states, because they're having to go through a lot of regulations to operate in a legalized state. Well, who are you to come in using this hemp-derived Delta-9 stuff and operating within the hemp guidelines? We can't operate like that. We have to operate under these separate set of regulations. I could understand why people would get upset about that. I also understand why people that are fully invested in the Delta-8 industry would not like Delta-9. They have a lot invested in all that. Here comes this Delta-9 guy. Who does he think he is? That's scary. Let's see what we can do to suppress that.
Got it. And in the next 6 months to a year, where would you like to see your businesses?
I think things are going to change a lot in the next 6 months to a year, particularly in the legalization of cannabis at the federal level. I think that's going to be coming. I think eventually you're going to see Delta-9 THC moved off of us as a Schedule I drug and move into some other realm. I think that the federal government is going to step out of the way of cannabis and allow states to do kind of their own thing. For example, right now in North Carolina, there is a medical marijuana bill working its way through the state Senate. I think that's kind of the direction that we're going to wind up going towards, getting more involved with the medical cannabis side of this. If it goes recreational, then it goes recreational. That'll just be part of it. But I think our industry is going to change probably away from hemp-derived products and more just into regular medicinal marijuana type of products.
Oh, so you are going to go into THC when it becomes.
Yeah, I think once, that's something we are absolutely looking at. I'm not sure right now how the medical marijuana is going to work in the state of North Carolina. We'll have to wait and see because nothing's passed yet. Who knows what a final bill will wind up looking like. But we do hope to be part of that. I think we already have the equipment. We have the know-how. We have all the technology to be able to do that very, very well. So I think that's the way it's going to go. Obviously, we'll continue to work in the hemp industry as we are right now, and we're going to continue to develop Delta-9 products using hemp, making sure they're compliant. And I think all the knowledge we gain from doing that will eventually help us once we do get medical marijuana in the state.
Yeah, even too after like THC is legal, there'll still be a place for CBD and Delta-8, Delta-9.
Oh, that's not going anywhere. No, the CBD is amazing. I'll tell you, we have helped so many people with CBD. It is one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory compounds out there. When you combine that with the other non-Delta cannabinoids, you can make just amazing, amazing medicinal products. No question about that. So that's not going anywhere ever. I think that part is going to continue to grow and expand. You can do a lot with hemp. You really, really can. It contains all those cannabinoids that are necessary to help people from a medicinal standpoint, and they do work. That's verified. The science is extremely clear on that.
Oh, of course. And another question I got for you too, like, what do you think what's the biggest issue you're facing right now with your businesses?
Oh boy, I'll tell you, we have there's a lot of challenges. I think there's still limitations on banking that need to be resolved. There's still a lot of banks that will not work with hemp companies. I had an experience where I had a bank that told me, yes, we will work with you as a hemp company, but then 1 year later, they come to me and say, we're not going to work with hemp companies anymore. You have to move your money. So, that is certainly a challenge, knowing that a bank can come in at any point. They may be working with you now, but that doesn't mean they're going to work with you tomorrow. And I think the other big challenge, and it's still on the banking side, is credit card processing. It's still difficult for people to find good credit card processors. The big credit card processors will not work with you. So you're kind of stuck working with these smaller credit card processors. They're going to charge you higher fees. And again, you run into the same problem there. My credit card processor worked with me for 6 months, then shut me down. Now I'm having to search. And that's very disruptive to business anytime that occurs. So I think that we need additional banking regulations to solve these issues that we're seeing with all these banks. And I understand they're nervous too. I mean, a bank is going to be concerned, is this a real hemp company? Or are they involved with marijuana or other drugs? Are they using this as a front? Are they laundering money through all this? I get it from the bank's standpoint, but we do need to get better regulations so that we can turn this into a legitimate business where people have full access to banking no matter what. And I don't know what it's going to take to get there. I know there's a lot of talk, but I'm not seeing any action.
Yeah, if this issue was fixed, where do you think that your business would be?
I think it would explode. I mean, if you had access, now remember, having access to banks doesn't mean just having a bank account. We need access to capital. A lot of the capital that's in this industry actually comes from individual investors, angel investors, things like that. It's difficult to get access to capital directly from a bank, particularly if you need short-term loans and that sort of thing. If we can get that changed and it gives you access to more money from banks and not having to find individuals, because going to an individual, now you got a partner. I'd rather partner with a bank in certain things. So if I could get those loans to invest in more equipment or to purchase large supplies of raw materials, that kind of thing, I think it can help, or even loans to help in advertising. There's a lot of things you can do if you had access to more money. Money's always the big thing, right? I think that would help the industry overall and help to move the industry forward. I'd also like to see the industry unite better. I know that there's a lot of various trade organizations all through the country, but we don't have one sort of big trade industry that involves the farmers, the manufacturers, the retail store owners, that can all come together and kind of figure out how we can move this industry forward. We don't have any type of leadership like that. And that can, if we had a big enough group of people all working for the same goal, now you can work together with the FDA to get sensible regulations moving forward, rather than the big corporations working with the FDA and doing their own self-serving regulations. And unfortunately, this is what you wind up seeing. I saw this in the e-cigarette industry as well, where we could never come together as a cohesive group. We did nothing but fight with each other. And as long as we fight with each other, we're never going to advance this industry forward, and the big industries are going to wind up taking over.
I hear you on that. And what advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about entering the space?
Somebody wants to get into this industry?
Yeah.
Boy, this is a very tough industry to get into. Number one, if you're trying to open up a retail store, for example, because when you talk about the industry, there's various things you can do within the industry. So a retail store in my area where I live right now, we're flooded with retail stores. There's one on every corner. Trying to come in and open up another retail store is going to be extremely difficult for you to do. So look at your area, try to find spots where there aren't 10 other retail stores around you. Then when you're purchasing products, make sure you find companies to work with who are making your products that are legitimate, have legitimate COAs, and know what they're doing. Test their knowledge base. Don't go with necessarily just the absolute lowest price, because you're going to get subpar products. Form relationships with those people you're buying from. Make sure they're good products. If you're a manufacturer, I think there's still a ton of room out there for additional manufacturers, but you want to try and create novel products. Everybody has a tincture. Everybody has a salve. Everybody has a capsule. It's all the same stuff. There's no magic behind all this. But what can you do? What type of product can you manufacture that is a little bit different than others? And can I manufacture that product at a very high quality? Can I demonstrate that I'm making these products at a high quality level? So I think as a manufacturer, that's what you want to do. Find those novel, unique products. As a farmer, boy, I don't know what kind of advice I can get to a farmer, because that is tough. Obviously, growing for biomass is one thing, but you got to make sure you already have contracts in place for that. Don't just grow. Make sure that you're working with someone that's going to buy your whole field at a time. Now, there is a market for smokable flower, But I think even that's a tough market. And now with all this D8 stuff coming out, it seems like the guys growing for smokable flower, that's getting harder and harder to drum up new business. You may have your certain guys and your certain stores you're already selling to, but to try to find new stores, I think that's a tough one. It really, really is. I'm not saying don't get into farming. If you do, start very, very small and make sure you have your customers lined up before you even put a single plant in the field.
Oh, wow. And if somebody wants to reach out to you, whether it's about like your products or just about the hemp industry in general, what's the best way to contact you?
You can always email me at Dennis, DENNIS, at Outworld, OUTWORLD, botanicals.com. So Dennis at outworldbotanicals.com. And of course, I'm also available on Facebook.
Oh, awesome. It was great having you on. If you have any new developments within your business, you're more than welcome to be back on. And thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Yep. And anybody who's still listening, please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you.